remote to hit start so that way my butt isn't in the video. That's how the video starts every week. My butt's in the video walking down the steps. So, first thing I want to do is just pray. Father, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to sit here before you again this evening. Tonight, Lord, as I share the message that you have given me, I want every word, every sentence, every paragraph to glorify you, to bring you praise and honor. Father, I thank you that you're the one that is put before everything in this ministry. Father, for the people who are still suffering with addiction, bring peace to them, bring freedom to them. Keep knocking at their heart like your word says that you will. I thank you so much that all we have to do is just open up our mouths and call on your name, Jesus, and then freedom is right there for us. That the moment that we raise up our hands and are willing to receive from you, you take away everything from us that is not serving to you. I just want to glorify you tonight and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. January 23rd was 11 years, calendar to calendar date, from when I started counting my clean time and sobriety. And it's kind of crazy to me, the road that I've been on, not just with addiction and not using and the lifestyle, changing everything, but then other things that I've gone through as well. So I don't like doing testimonies a whole lot, because if you're not careful, the only person that's going to be showcased is the person speaking, and it's not going to be God who's glorified through it. So I just want to be careful tonight as I do this, that it's going to showcase God in every single situation in my life that has brought me to this point right here. The first time I can remember ever cracking a beer, I was 8 years old. I was my son Michael's age, and I drank it, and I knew to hide the evidence before I was caught. That was the first time. And it's funny to me because I've seen a lot of people always drinking and carrying on and what have you, and for whatever, that lifestyle really appealed to me when I was a kid, even as young as 6, 7, 8 years old. It just appealed to me. It just seemed like the right thing to do, and I knew I could do that life and enjoy it. So from that moment, within the next 4 years, some other things had taken place in my life that were traumatic, and so in order to try to cover those things up, I knew that I could turn to alcohol and it not be, those hurts wouldn't be on the top level. I would be able to suppress them with alcohol. And it wasn't even, my addiction didn't start by becoming addicted to alcohol. My addiction started becoming addicted to the party lifestyle. Becoming addicted to knowing that I could suppress all those fears that I had. I don't like, it's great. I don't like being in front of people talking. I don't like being in large crowds of people and then everybody's attention being on me. So I knew that I could drink, and that fear didn't bother me anymore. I knew that I could drink and it would suppress any feelings and hurts and worries. I hate talking about this stuff. When I was young, I had been molested, and oddly enough, several times by several different people. It was almost as if I had a target on my back that said, hey, this kid's easy to prey on, so that's what people would do. And it was hard, and it brought up a lot of it was just hard. It was hard, and it hurt, and so I knew that drinking would push all that stuff away and make the pain not hurt so bad, except for when I was sober. And then when I got into life situations where I had to meet new people, what have you, I was always afraid of people. I was always afraid to be around people because I knew that it was going to, fear of things that may have happened to me might come out. Just whatever. I just didn't like being around people. It was uncomfortable for me. And then as I got older, and then, my mother passed away when I was 13. So I drank to cover up that pain. I also started experimenting with drugs not long after that, which I didn't care for drugs too much until after I was an adult. And it just seems weird to sit here and talk about all this stuff right now. It just doesn't even feel normal. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel comfortable because I'm just not that person anymore. I'm not the person that dealt with all those fears and all those hurts and all those insecurities and all those things that happened to me when I was young just don't even register to who I am today. It doesn't, and that's why I just seem really uncomfortable right now talking about this, because I am. It's just not who I am anymore. And the more I'm sitting here talking about it, the more I'm realizing that I just don't even like talking about it. It's because it's not who I am anymore. It's not even part of my chemical DNA makeup as to who I am now. It's like I'm talking about a different person. And this is really weird how this is coming out right now, but that's how I feel. It's just like I'm talking about a completely different individual. And it's really, it's mind blowing right now. But there's people that need to hear that you can be so addicted to so many things, and not just the alcohol or the drugs, because those are just substances that you're putting in your body. And yes, they have a root that they can take a hold of you and make you physically dependent upon them. But it's the lifestyle. The lifestyle is what I was more addicted to than anything else. Not the ripping and running part, because that just became monotonous, but the part of I could go into a bar where I knew nobody, drink a couple beers, and then be everybody's friend. Everybody loved me. I loved everybody. And it was, I could go into a situation with a couple, some alcohol in my system and just be like, man, I can do this, whatever it is. And I was like, all right, this is cool, I can do this. Or if I felt depressed about missing my mom, or if I started thinking about those things that happened to me as I was growing up, and I knew I could drink, I could always turn to that to suppress the pain and the feeling of what I was dealing with and what I grew up with. My parents, I'm oldest of 7 kids, and my parents did the best that they could with what they had and their knowledge of parenting that they could do with us growing up. One thing I've learned is that there's not a parent out there that walks the line and does everything perfect. We all mess up as parents. I do stupid stuff. Growing up, things I look back on weren't the perfect ideal situation or decision that was made in my upbringing, but it's what happened. I'm grown now. I don't harbor any ill feelings or even so much worry about what was done back then. The only thing that I do is I try to take what happened when I was growing up that I see as wrong. Whether or not my parents see it as wrong is irrelevant. It just that part doesn't even matter. But what I see as wrong, and to not do that with my own kids, that's the part that I see is that's a growth potential opportunity as a parent, is to take what you've seen as wrong as parenting skills and then not do that with your own kids. So anyway, life of drugs and alcohol, stupid decisions, doing stupid things. That's just all part of the lifestyle. And some go to more extremes than others. I went to pretty much every extreme that you could possibly think of. I was thinking today as I was getting ready for tonight, with what is it that I didn't do in my life of addiction? Because that would probably be easier for me to talk about the things that I didn't do as opposed to the things that I did do. Because the things that I did do were so, the list is huge. And the list of stuff that I didn't do is probably very small by comparison. So, let me say this before I get into any of that. It does not matter what I did in my past. It's not who I am today. What I did in the past, what people will continue to throw up in my face that I did in the past, none of that matters. Does it make me angry when somebody does it? Yeah. Does it hurt my feelings? Okay, if that's what you want to, if that's how you want to phrase it. But I think above all else, I think what bothers me the most is that the person is shallow enough to keep bringing up my past to me when it's not even who I am anymore, you know? And that's time allowed, the time that separates from who I used to be versus who I am now. I just don't see where people have the audacity to be able to bring up my past like that to me. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject. So January 23rd, 2004, I entered a rehabilitation center for 28 days. I had no idea where my life was going to go. All I knew is that I was a huge coke addict, did a lot of crack, took a lot of pills, drank a lot of beer, alcohol period, any kind of alcohol I get my hands on. I started drinking from the time I opened my eyes in the morning until I passed out that night or a couple days later, depending upon what kind of money I had access to. Man, it's uncomfortable to talk about all that stuff. So, I enter into a facility, and I'm there for 28 days. And I don't remember, honestly, I can sit here and tell you, I don't remember the first week and a half, 2 weeks. I just don't remember that. I was completely phased out. The only thing I remember is my wife showing up to support me on Sunday, to let me know she was still there for me. I didn't have the bony little finger pointed in my face saying, "You've screwed up our lives and you've done this and you've done that." All I remember is my wife being there as a support, encouraging me, letting me know that I can get through it, that I can do this. So I get out of that treatment facility, and out of everything that they taught me there, the one thing I remember them teaching me the most is if you are comfortable leaving this facility after your 28 days, you probably aren't going to make it. If you're comfortable leaving here, you're probably going to go use again. You should be scared to leave here. And the whole time I was there, I didn't understand what that meant, because that just sounded, that was confusing to me. Now, I can't wait to get back out of here, be with my wife, start my life, get things going. But then 3 or 4 days leading up to the time it was for me to leave, I got real scared, because I knew that now I wasn't going to have these 4 walls that are surrounding me right now, with all these doctors around me, with all these people who are dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with around me, to support me when I feel like using. I'm now going to be back out in the big bad world, and I might use again. And I was scared to death about that. I was real scared about it. So they suggested that when I left the facility, that I did 90 meetings in 90 days. They would bring in guest speakers into this facility that they would come in and do much like I'm doing this evening and share my experience, strength, and hope. And there was this one guy named Dale who came in and he shared, and his story kind of made sense to me. I could kind of relate to what he was talking about. And so I went up to him and I said, when I get out of here, would you be my sponsor? He said, I'll tell you what, here's my number. When you get out of here, call me. And if you're really serious about this, I'll be your sponsor and we'll get you to some meetings. We'll do this thing called recovery. I said, all right, cool. And then the week after him, there was a guy that came in who was sharing, and he lost his dad at a young age. And he and his father were really close. And I was very resentful of my mother dying when I was so little, because the way that my mom died, it was every bit as much as her fault that she died as it is the person who killed her. So I was, so I carried a lot of resentment because I just couldn't understand why a parent would put themselves in that kind of predicament to where they could lose their life. So I was still very angry with her. And this guy was sharing about how his dad died, which is much in the same way that my mother had died. And he said, the quickest thing that I learned through my sobriety is that I just had to get over it. That I had to forgive my dad and move on with my life, because I was never going to get anywhere if I hadn't done that. So I realized that night when he was in, so that way I could forgive her for dying, which is a weird thing to say when you think about it, because why would you forgive somebody for dying? But that's what I had to do. And that was the beginning of my my road to recovery, was that acceptance of her death. So I get out of this place. There was a meeting not far from where where I had stayed for 28 days. That started at 12:30. Started at 12 noon. And I quickly said to my wife, they have a meeting again at 3 o'clock today. I'll hit that one. Let's go home. My wife said, no, I don't think so. I think you need to go hit that meeting. So first thing I did after she told me to do that is I called this guy Dale. And he said, I'll pick you up at 5:30 at your house and take you to another meeting. So quickly about all that, they said 90 meetings in 90 days. I did about 90 meetings in 45 days because I was scared to death I was going to use it. Because I knew me. And I knew that all I needed was one little excuse, one little window of opportunity, and I was going to run with it. See, I've been an extremist about everything my entire life. Even to this day, I still kind of am. I have as most addicts, an instant gratification thing. What I want, and I got to have it right now. And if I don't have it right now, then it's the world's fault, and the world's going to implode if I don't get it right now. And instant gratification kills. It kills your finances, it kills your peace, and it kills your joy, because you'll do nearly almost anything to fulfill that instant gratification. They'll even kill relationships. I've seen it. So it's going strong for quite some time, and so we'll skip ahead here about 4.5 years, and this is something that I don't talk about a whole lot because I don't like to, because it not that it's painful, it was an ugly time in my life. About 4.5 years into my sobriety, I got sick. I thought I was actually having a heart attack, and I went to the hospital. They didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. All I know is I called the phone number on the back of my insurance card, kind of like the 1-800 Ask a Nurse thing, or whatever it is. And well, they ended up sending an ambulance to the house so that I could, and they took me to the hospital. They were checking me for a heart attack. And I was 31 years old at the time. And yeah, so when I got to the hospital, they gave me nitrous glycerin, I think it's called, and that was helping calm me down. So, but stress test and everything was normal. I didn't have any problems with my heart. So about a year goes by from that point, and it started back up again. But this time it was violent, and it was horrific, really, for lack of a better way to put it. I thought I was having a heart attack again. I was off work for a long weekend. The company I worked at, I had off Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And I spent all weekend long sick in the hospital, I think twice that weekend, because we didn't know what was going on. There was something physically going on with me, and we didn't know what it was, and the doctors couldn't figure it out either. But every time they gave me the nitroglycerin, I was able to calm down. Monday or Tuesday morning, I went to work, and I work in a field where numbers is what I do. I mess with numbers all the time, interest rates, payments, loans, the whole 9 yards. And so I could always remember numbers. I could remember people's phone numbers. If they bought a car 3 years ago, I could remember basically their payment, their interest rate, and some other things. I started having this problem again. I didn't know what it was. All I remember is that I tried to call my finance director, and I couldn't remember her four-digit extension. My body started cramping up real bad, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I started pounding on the wall because it went to the other manager's office. And I was pounding on the wall because I couldn't really talk. I couldn't yell. I couldn't do anything. This was in 2008. Come to find out, what was happening to me is I was having severe panic attacks, and they were literally crippling my body, and they were so painful. And this went on for a long time. I had to go to try to figure out what was wrong with me. I checked myself into Shepherd Pratt because the doctors at the hospital couldn't tell me what was going on. I didn't know if it was a depression thing. I didn't know if it was an anxiety thing. I didn't know what was going on. So I checked in at Shepherd Pratt because I knew that there was doctors there, and I think we were referred there by the hospital. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And so that was the beginning of the worst nightmare I've ever lived in my life. For 3 years. For 3 years I had to live with this nightmare. And it wouldn't go away. It wouldn't stop. I had to stop working because I couldn't be in public. I was a salesman. That's what I did my whole life. I've been a salesman. Hate talking in front of people, so I choose a career where all I do is talk to people I don't know. But that's kind of how I've always lived my life. If there's something I don't like, I usually put myself in that situation. It's just kind of weird how that works for me. So anyway, I ended up going to Shepherd Pratt. I don't remember how long I was there. But all I remember is they diagnosed me with, they tell me I'm bipolar, they tell me I'm schizophrenic, they tell me that I'm manic depressive, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I didn't care if I died. I didn't care what happened to me, really, at this point, or at least so I thought. And I remember, God almighty, man, we've made so many trips to the hospitals because I'm sitting there, I keep getting these panic attacks. The best way that I was ever I try to explain this to my wife and to doctors as to how I felt when these panic attacks set in. It's really weird because it would start in my knees. And I remember telling my wife and these doctors, the only way to describe to you how I feel is I feel like there's a fat guy sitting on my chest and I can't breathe. And I feel like they're stabbing me all over my body because I'm in so much pain when it starts to kick in, when it starts to happen. And this was happening several times a day. It's sometimes double digits. And it was painful. You know, and even as I sit here and think about how much pain I was dealing with, I remember my boy, who was like 10 years old at the time, and my wife, could only imagine what it was like to be on the other end of it, on the other end of the spectrum, to watch somebody you love deal with something and you don't know how to fix it. You don't know how to help them. You don't know what's going on. Are they going to live? Are they going to die? And that was hard. It's hard for everybody involved. So that was my life for the next few years, back and forth to the doctors. Doctor telling me, with the medication you're taking, you're shaving about 15, 20 years off your life. And you know, I remember sitting in the doctor's office when he told me that. And the moment he told me, the moment he said that out loud, I immediately thought of a story in the Bible that I heard when I was a kid, which was Job. I made a decision at that point in time that that was not going to be me. I made a decision at that point that something was going to change. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I was not going to be on medicine the rest of my life. I knew that I wasn't going to be in this situation forever. And I said to the doctor before I left the appointment that day, looked at him and said, Dr. Russell, I said, I got to tell you something. I said, I grew up in church. I'm not a godly man. I don't even pray anymore. As a matter of fact, I've been mad at God for a number of years now. My wife still goes to church, but I don't. But I said, when you told me that this was taking all these years off my life and that this was basically going to be the rest of my life, story that I heard as a kid in church about Job. He lost everything. He lost all his money. He lost his cattle. He lost his family. His kids died. His wife. Everybody was gone. He lost everything. I said, it's kind of where I'm at right now. I've lost everything. Everything I've ever worked hard for, I've lost. My house, my cars, my family's just dropping around me. They're just, because they don't know how to handle me, because I don't even know how to handle myself. But the moral of that story is you got it all back and then some. I said, that's going to be my story one day. So I'm just making that. I'm determined that I'm going to make that my story. So my wife, like I said, was going to church and all during this time, and as much as I was fighting against God, doing everything that I could possibly do, I was taking all kinds of medications. Medications that if I stopped abruptly could actually kill me. So at one point I said, you know, I was laying in bed one night and my wife had been coming home and telling me what the pastor was saying and you know, what she was learning and what she was watching on TV. And man, I'm sitting on the couch, my recliner, and I'm thinking to myself, would you just shut up? I don't want to hear all this. I don't care. It has done nothing for us at all. We went to church together. We did all that, and it didn't do anything for us, you know. And how selfish is that? That's the truth, though. It's how I felt. It's what I thought. And so she kept talking to me, kept telling me all this stuff. And then one day, she was telling me about a preacher I remembered when I was a kid. Pastor Perry Stone, and the first time that I had ever really knew what, hearing a message about Christ and about God that really appealed to me came through Perry Stone. So she told me he has a program on TV now, so I was flipping it on, I was watching it. And he was saying a lot of stuff, and I could see a lot of things that were going on in the news and around the world. It was appealing to me, so I started listening more. And little did I know that, because God has a way that when He calls your name, you're going to respond to Him. He's going to give you an opportunity when He calls your name, when He calls you by name, to respond to Him. And He's going to do it in any means that He can do it in order to grab a hold of your attention. So I didn't... So anyway... So I started, I'm going to try to close this up. So I started, I was laying in bed one night after I had a rough day with panic attacks. I had taken some medicine, and this medicine would, put me out for hours. So I am sitting here, I'm laying in bed one night, and I said, God, I know you're there. I know you're real. And I'm tired of having panic attacks. I don't want to have them anymore. I'm just sick of having them. I'm sick of taking all this medicine. I'm sick of all of this. And I don't want to do this anymore. See, I knew my life was coming to an end. Because either this nonsense was going to stop, or I was going to take my own life. That's just the way it is. I know me, and I know what was going to happen. I've just had enough. And I haven't had a panic attack since that night. And that's been, 5 years now. So I started weaning off the other medicines because I just knew that there was something different about me. I didn't know what it was because I didn't understand, but I knew that there was something different about me. I didn't even tell my wife I was weaning off the medicines because she would lose her mind, and I knew she would lose her mind. If I said, hey, I prayed last night and I'm just going to stop taking medicine, she would freak out. She would be like, because she had seen the horror that everything that I was doing and going through and what the family had gone through. I didn't even know my own kids anymore. I barely knew my wife. Because I was just this lump that sat on a recliner from 11 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning, and then I would sleep all day because I couldn't be around anybody. I wasn't even trusted to be with my own kids alone. Based on doctor's orders. Forgot about that. So I started weaning myself off the medicine, and then after a few months I was completely off all the medicine, and the first one I told was my uncle. I went over to help him with a pool. To put up a pool. And we were talking, I told him, I said, I haven't been on medicine in a couple of months now. I haven't told my wife yet because I don't want her to freak out. And then finally, she's like, why are all this, you still have all this medicine, you haven't had it refilled in forever. Well, then you kind of got to tell her something, So I told her that I had weaned myself off, and she had noticed I hadn't been having panic attacks anymore. And we started going to church. She didn't freak out. God had given her a peace. He let her know that He was in control and that He had the situation. He let me know He was in control and He had the situation. And then we went to church. We went to a building called church. And then Christ came in me. And I had an encounter with God that I didn't know was possible. And in 2010, the tail end of it, November 7th, 2010, after almost 7 years of living a sober life, I became a disciple of Christ. And He removed every addiction that I've ever had in my life to a lifestyle, to a dangerous life, to alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. Took it all in one shot. Bam, gone. Didn't have a preacher lay hands on me, didn't have anybody come over and surround me. I wasn't part of a fire prayer circle. It was just one-on-one, me with God at the altar, willing to receive what it was that He was willing to take. No religious antics, no crazy prayer, just talking to God. And He took it. And since that time, it's the first time for almost 7 years, I always wanted to drink. Because I enjoy drinking. I'm not going to sit here and say one word or the other. I enjoy drinking. So for almost 7 years, I was fighting not drinking because I wanted to drink. I didn't want to use drugs because drugs really messed up my life bad. But I remembered a lot of good times drinking. So I wanted to drink. But then, see, what ended up happening is God gave me His wine. And when He gave me His wine, I no longer had a taste for the old wine. And when He put this new body on, when He infused me with, and my wife and I were just talking about this today, when Jesus Christ infused me with His blood, when He changed my DNA, I no longer felt like that old person that had all these panic attacks, that was molested, that danced in a strip club, that did all this junk and lived his life of pain and torment and chaos. Did a lot of stupid things. Man, I did a lot of stupid things. Some of which put me in jail because of being stupid. Drinking, drugging, partying. See, I'm one of the few people that has become a statistic of, they tell you every time you go into rehab, 1 out of 10 people are going to make it. 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10. And here I sit tonight, 1 out of 10. I don't know about all the people I was in rehab with. I didn't keep in touch with any of them. But see, what I know is this. 100% of the time, the people that come to this program, to the Edge Ministry, because we put Jesus Christ at the forefront. We put His crucifixion, His death, and His resurrection first. That 100% of the time, if people will accept Him for who He is, it will change your life forever. And you will never, ever, ever have to worry about using again. It's not a religious thing. It's not a church thing. It's a Jesus Christ relationship thing. That's why I'm so passionate about this. And that's why when I get up and I start talking about Jesus, man, I get to hollering and get real loud sometimes. But see, that's because I was dying. I was dead. I mean, I was really dead. I really was dead. Ask my wife. She can look at me. I was dead. I've got pictures on my Facebook profile that show me dead. My eyes may have been open, but there was no life there. But now when you see pictures of me, if I were to put the two snapshots next to one another, you could easily see death versus life. So here we are 11 years later. And I've got a pretty good life. And the only reason that I even have this life is because Jesus is at the forefront of it. Because I have a relationship with Him. Because see, if I didn't have a relationship with Him, I wouldn't have my wife. I wouldn't have my wife, I wouldn't have my kids, because I'd be in a box in the ground. It's real simple, I'd be dead. So, that's the testimony. That's the testimony that I have. That's the testimony that God has given me. And there's two scriptures that I'm going to read, and I'm going to close with it. The first one is Revelation 12:2. No, I'm sorry. It's not 12:2. We just had a guest pastor in here last week that said, hold on a second, where's that scripture at? Oh my. I've overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony. That's the scripture that I wanted to read. And that's exactly what has happened. I have overcome by the blood of the Lamb, which has given me the word of my testimony. And the other scripture I know very well. I know right where it's at. And it's Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. The moment He calls your name, you are called according to His purpose. I love God, but I only love God because He first loved me. And I know that everything that happens and everything that I do is working together for His good and for His glory, because it's all for His glory. None of it's for mine. I'm just willing. That's it. I've just made myself willing to Him, and open and obedient. So, sadly there's people who aren't lucky enough I kind of had my world a little wrecked this week. I just want to tell you that, that's a success story for addiction and sickness and disease and disparity. And that's only because I let go of my will and I allowed God's will to be done in my life. If I hadn't let go of my will, I'd be dead. There's a young lady who wouldn't let go of her will. And she chose to end her own life Wednesday night. And I never even met this person, but I know the horrors of this this lie from the pit of hell called addiction. And we spoke through messaging on Monday night. Man, I was just I couldn't stop talking to this individual because she was just struggling. And I got a message on Thursday that she had killed herself. And but that's the horror of addiction. You're either going to get it and you're going to get clean, or you're going to die. There's no in between. There's no maybes or ifs. It's either life or death. You're either going to get it and live, or you're not going to get it and it's going to kill you. So you hear all the time, you're going to end up one of a few places, jail, institution, or death. Man, even if you go to jail, you get back out, you might go to an institution, you get back out, you're still ultimately going to end in death if you don't give it up, if you don't stop. Quit living a lie, thinking that you are tricking everybody, because you're not. So stop. Just stop using. I mean, really, that's the best advice that I could give you. Stop using. You're not strong enough to do it on your own. So call out to the author and the finisher of faith. Call out to Jesus, because I promise you that when you do, he's going to answer you back, and he's going to take from you what it is that you have to be willing to give. The moment that you're willing to give it up, he's going to take it from you completely, and he'll wash you clean. It'll be like you never have done it before. I'm talking from experience. I've seen him do it to me. And if he felt me worthy enough to do it too, coming from where I come from, doing the things I've done, he's going to be willing to do it for anybody else. Father, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for going to the cross. I want to thank you for bridging that gap between death and life. I know for a fact if it wasn't for what you did 2,000 years ago, there's no way in the world that I could be sitting here right now. So I just want to give you praise for that. I want to thank you for it. If anybody is still struggling, if anybody's having a hard time, I pray that you've watched this, that you hear God through this, and that you pick up the phone, you get in touch with somebody. Reach out to somebody. Call on Jesus. His name is above all names, which means his name is above addiction. Just keep saying his name. Jesus. 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 Jesus, in your name I pray. Amen.